Shaila ma'am, please turn off your camera and mic.
Should I turn off?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And mic also?
Yes, ma'am. Later you can start.
Should I turn it on when?
Hello, everyone. A pleasant evening to all of you. I am Xavier Pradeep Singh. On behalf of the English Language Teachers Association of India, I am immensely happy to welcome all of you to this webinar on the art and craft of the short story. As you are aware, ELTAI is the oldest and largest network of English language teachers in India. Before we begin the session, we would like to introduce what ELTAI is and does. Here is a short video introduction about ELTAI. Please watch it. Thank you for watching the video. Now, we have amidst us Dr. Bandana Chakrabarti to moderate today's session on the art and craft of the short story. Dr. Bandana Chakrabarti is the president of ELTAI Jaipur chapter, Rajasthan. Formerly, she was the joint director, Commissionerate of College Education, Rajasthan. She has over 37 years of teaching experience. She has presented papers in international conferences in India and abroad. She has been instrumental in organizing several international conferences and workshops. She is the apt person to moderate today's webinar on the art and craft of the short story because her doctoral research was on the short stories of Alice Munro. She has also authored a book titled Fictions of the Self, Alice Munro. Besides, she has also co-edited several anthologies. On behalf of all the participants and ELTAI, I warmly welcome you, ma'am. Over to you now.
Thank you, Dr. Xavier. Good evening, friends. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to webinar 16. The title of today's webinar is The Art and Craft of the Short Story. Friends, don't we all love short stories? Haven't we heard short stories or fairy tales from our grandmothers and grandfathers? Who doesn't love a short story? And I think we are all telling a short story sometime or the other. If we are late for school or college or for work, we make up a story, we tell a story, we concoct a story, we cook up a story. So stories are part of our lives. But what is a short story? Let us first define or ask ourselves, what is a short story? A short story is a piece of prose narrative which is shorter than a novel, which has a few characters and which aims at unity of effect. And as Dr. Xavier said that I have worked on the short stories for my dissertation, I would like to draw your attention to something, that a unique area of literary activity, the short story was a neglected genre as compared to the powerful narrative that is the novel. And it was compared, it was not considered respectable enough as compared to the novel. And it was only after the Second World War that the short story started getting recognition as a good genre. And as I would like to share with you, friends, that it was only in the year 2013 that for the first time in the history of the Nobel Prize for Literature, the one who won this prize was the Canadian short story writer, not a novelist. She's never written novels, Alice Munro. As far as the two terms in our topic is concerned, the art and the craft. The art refers to the innate ability of an individual, and craft would refer to the skills and the experience that go into that art. First of all, I would like to welcome all the three panelists. They are Dr. Shaila Mahan, Dr. Sanjay Kumar, and Professor Vinita Dhondial, two of whom are themselves short story writers. So you will have it straight from the horse's mouth today. First of all, I welcome Dr. Shaila Mahan. Dr. Shaila Mahan is an associate professor in the Commissionerate of College Education, Rajasthan, Jaipur, and she is a teacher trainer who specializes in ELT and Indian writings in English. Dr. Mahan has traveled widely, and she's a widely traveled professional who has made presentations at numerous international seminars and conferences. Presently, she is associated with the British Council, and she is also the General Secretary of Rajasthan ELTAI. Welcome, Dr. Shaila Mahan. Over to you, ma'am.
Shaila ma'am, please turn on your mic.
Thanks so much, Vanna ji. And good evening, everyone. Am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. Before anything else, I would like to thank the ELTAI committee for organizing this wonderful series of webinars and for making me and all of us a part of this exciting academic adventure. Friends, all of you would agree that reading short stories is always a rewarding experience. As teachers of English, I believe all of us can use this genre to enrich not only the literary sensibilities, but also the communicative skills and the critical thinking abilities of our learners. In this brief presentation, we'll try and understand how short stories and mini sagas can be used as creative tools to make our students interact more freely and vigorously, which could be a great way to turn our classes into vibrant centers of learning. In this age of instant coffee, instant noodles, instant messaging, and instant gratification, short story is the need of the day. The attention span of our learners is rapidly shrinking. So we do need to find new and innovative ways and means to engage their interest. To my mind, short stories and mini sagas can easily be utilized to attract the attention of our learners and make the classroom a truly enriching experience for them. Let me take you through this presentation to discover some insights into how short stories and mini sagas can be used for effective learning. Here are some interesting facts about short stories. Edgar Allan Poe, the evocative writer of mystery and horror, was perhaps the first one to use the term short story. As we all know, O. Henry, Catherine Mansfield, Rudyard Kipling, and Mark Twain are widely regarded as some of the greatest writers of short stories. But here, I would like to talk about a writer who is known for his novels rather than his short stories. Yes, you're right. I'm talking about Hemingway. While his novels are well known, most of us are hardly aware of the short story, of at least a short story that he wrote. It wasn't published, but it was circulated amongst his friends and literary colleagues. Let's take a glimpse at this short story, which comprises of just 6 words. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. Look at the pithy style of Hemingway's writing. The juxtaposition of these 6 words, they tell a moving and poignant tale. Hemingway wrote these words way back in 1901, when the concept of mini sagas was unknown. But it would not be wrong in saying that it contains the seeds of mini saga. Look at this captivating picture. Does it ring some kind of bell? Are you reminded of a story that you might have read in your childhood days? I would love to see your responses. If you can think of an appropriate, title or say a caption for this story. It is said that a picture says much more than words. A picture is in fact worth 1,000 words. This beautiful picture says a story of its own, a story which we might have read in our childhood days. Yes, I can see some responses which says that unity is strength, and about unity. Unity is strength, unity is strength, lots of responses. And yes, all talking about unity. If you would recall, this was a story of a flock of doves getting trapped into a net laid down by a fowler. These doves, when they realize there is no escape, their leader gets an idea, a brilliant one, and the leader directs all the birds, all the doves to, rise in unison, and they all hold the tip of the net with their beak, and lo and behold, to the astonishment of the fowler, the bird catcher, they escape. And then they go to a mouse who's a friend of theirs, and the mouse chews the net, and they are able to get away. The idea behind the story is that unity is paramount, unity is power, and when there is teamwork and collaboration, great things can be achieved. This is a long story which can be curtailed into a short one, a mini saga. A mini saga? Yes, a short tale based on a long story. It contains about, say, 50 words, and it has a title of approximately 15 characters, less than 15 characters. So with this shrinking attention span, and with so many distractions or attractions for the young person, the mini saga is something which is very, very relevant to our times. Yes, I can see in the chat box that someone mentioned that it is a story from Panchtantra. We have many such stories that could be, we can effectively use them for our teaching purposes. Here is the mini saga based on this story from Panchtantra. Just have a look at it. It's being displayed on the screen right now. Some people, I can see the reaction in the chat that they can't see the screen. Can anyone help me by telling whether the screen is visible? Can you see what is being displayed?
The scene is visible, ma'am.
Okay. Here is a short video which I would want to share with you. Just have a look at it, and I'm sure you will enjoy viewing it. When a picture is worth 1,000 words, then a video is worth 1,000 pics or 1,000,000 words. I'll just play the video. It's a interesting and absorbing video.
It's smarter to travel in groups.
as you can well see, Xavier, can I have my presentation? As you can well see, this video, tells story. It is in fact telling 3 stories. Story, all the elements of the story, the plot, the setting, the conflict, the characters are, can be visible in this short video. And we can make use of such devices, such tools to teach not only the comprehension and the understanding skills, but also the higher order, abilities like interpretative skills, analytical skills. Here are some of the questions which have been formulated here. Just have a look at them. Questions to ponder, which can easily be used, employed in the classroom setting, even for online purposes, which can teach, not just the communicative skills, but also the critical thinking abilities. It can improve the critical thinking skills. I had devised this presentation keeping in mind the college going, the first year level student. But it could well be, customized and tailored to meet the needs and
Dr.
demands.
Mahan?
Yes, I will just, I will wrap
you
up.
have a minute to use.
Okay. Thank you so much, Vandnaji, for informing me. So here are some of the questions, as I mentioned, and these, stories can be tailored. You can pick so many of them. They are all available all around. These are stories which we have all grown up with, as Vandnaji just mentioned. Very interesting and colorful pictures. And before winding up, I wish to just reiterate that these rich literary resources that are available to us can well be used for our classroom teaching. They can make our classroom more engaging, more meaningful, and as teachers, more rewarding experience. Thank you so much for patient listening, and over to you, Vandnaji.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shaila Mahan, for a wonderful presentation. Dr. Mahan has provided an insight into using short stories or mini sagas as tools for enhancing the linguistic and critical thinking skills of our learners. So as teachers, we can make use of these stories for our students in the classroom. Thank you so much. I now invite our second panelist, Dr. Sanjay Kumar. Dr. Sanjay Kumar is a short story writer himself, and he is an author, teacher, researcher, and trainer in English language, literature, and communication skills. With an academic career spanning over 27 years, he has held academic as well as administrative positions at various institutions like BITS Pilani, J.K. Lakshmipad Singhania University, Jaipur, M.K. Sabu College, Pilani, Government College, Loharu, and CDL University, Sirsa. Dr. Sanjay Kumar has authored and co-authored about 15 books, which have been published by Oxford University Press and Prentice Hall of India. Over to you, Dr. Sanjay Kumar. Welcome you, sir.
Sanjay sir, please turn on your camera and mic.
Hello, am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Can you please turn on your camera as well?
Is it audible now? Am I visible now?
No, sir, not yet, sir.
Can you see the slides
Yes,
now?
sir.
Okay. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'll be speaking about the different strategies and stratagems in the art of storytelling. So, Forget about the strategies. Take a look at how such story starts. Some of the masterpieces, some of the great stories. The first one, I read some lines, just read with me. A still August night, a mist is rising slowly from the fields and casting an opaque veil over everything within eyesight. A dead body by Anton Chekhov. Look at this one. They discovered the girl's head protruding from the mud pit, eyes wide open, calling soundlessly. What are they doing, all these writers? That is, starting on a very, very suspenseful note. Look at this great O. Henry, how it begins, the great story, that is the gift of the Magi. $1.87. That was all. Somebody is counting and looking right into your heads. I mean, this is how many of the short stories, quintessentially, many great stories start like that. Why are they doing this? Why are they resorting to this kind of a strategy? Why are they trying to start a story so very abruptly, so very dramatically, on such a captivating note? The answer, my dear friends, is very simple, because the short story writer doesn't have the time. He has to produce immediately, he has to deliver straight away, he has to get off to a rousing start right in the beginning, because he doesn't have the luxury of a novelist who can probably set a long preamble, meander about, go off the tangent for a long while, and then can make a slow agonizing recovery, just as so many of the big daddies of novel writing do. But then these short story masters, they actually start on a very captivating note. In fact, a good captivating story is the one that grabs your attention straight away. It's like that is catching the reader straight away by the scruff of his neck and not letting him go. So the stories, even by the big daddies of short writings, they begin like this. If that happens, what do you think that the little kids like me in the short story would be doing? Look at these lines. Last Saturday was an unusual day for Sadajivan Ram. Look at the paradox in his title. In this man's name, in his family too. In his 80 years of long life, it was this day that he was dead for the first time. I mean, of course, everybody, the moment you look at somebody writing dead for the first time, you would startle. Of course, there'll be smirk on your face. Does anybody die twice? Okay, please don't take offense on the right-hand side picture. I don't expect myself to be looking any better than this if I choose to die at the advanced age of 88 years as such. So you have to startle the audience. In fact, most of the short story writers, young and old, the big daddies or the grown-up boys like Kunal Basu, look at this one. How is he trying to induce the intrigue right at the beginning itself? I met my father 11 years after his death. I mean, you just look at and see what is he telling, by the way. After the first wave of disbelief, he said, let's go to Lenin's cafe. I mean, this is how quintessentially many of the stories begin. They catch you straight away. And in fact, they seem to be hitting the road running almost, and you have to catch up with them very fast. Imagine yourself reading any such thing on a one fine day. Wouldn't be reading any further. Yes, you would be reading any further. And that is where the purpose of a short story lies, that he has to make you read further. And in fact, look at this great Margaret Atwood, how she also begins it. Such a great writer and resorting to this kind of a strategy. Look at this, how she begins her masterpiece, Bread. That is the name of a short story. Imagine a piece of bread. She introduces the topic, she proposes the idea, and then she pushes it straight away. You don't have to imagine it. It's right here in the kitchen, on the breadboard, in its plastic bag, lying beside the bread knife. No, she is not teaching us how a bread looks like, or a knife, what has a bread to do with the knife. She's telling you how to capture the attention of the audience straight away. So off to a flyer all these writers are, because they have a very limited space, they have a very small canvas, and they have a lot to draw in that. So they don't have much time. maybe just like any speakers these days on webinar, they speak very little. They are supposed to be very short in their presentations. So anyway, my time is also running, but look at what, to understand a short story, probably we have to look at some very striking remark by Robert Morgan. A short story is like a snake in that it strikes quick and draws blood. I mean, look at this one. It's very crude analogy, but then definitely not farther from the truth. If it is an exaggeration, certainly an exaggeration of a vital truth. So you have to actually understand that the beginnings of short stories are very captivating, very dramatic, very intense. In fact, many a time very abrupt, very startling, and we have to tell our students these things because the moment they look at a short story, they should be paying very specific attention to the beginnings because they actually want, they have to pick up this skill because even if they become public speakers, they have to capture the attention of the listeners because listening and reading, they are tougher than speaking and writing. Anyway, this is how the story begins. So you have to tell them that these are some of the strategies, and these strategies at times become rather mendacious. In fact, you see many a time the writers laying very placid kind of surfaces, but deep inside there are actually smoldering volcanoes. Look at this one, how An Avenger by Anton Chekhov starts. Look at somebody selecting a suitable revolver, I mean, for his wife because he finds that she is not faithful to him. And look at these sinister words. His countenance expressed wrath, grief, and unalterable determination. I know what I must do, he was thinking. And we are also thinking. But just tell me one thing, my dear friends. Once you see this beginning, would you be leaving the story there? No, certainly not. It is here that stories become unputdownable. That is what a kind of a sales letter they are. Very persuasive, very captivating, and actually it has to begin like that. Most of the stories like that they begin, and some of the tyros like me also try these things. That is Pozo's Third Coming I wrote, and this is how I began that story in a very dramatic way. A quiet night in a housing society. Past midnight, a dark and Scorpio pulls in front of a villa number Z313. After a while, its headlights are turned off. A few seconds more, and the insides of the car come alive with dim illumination. Look at the drama here created purposefully so that the people keep reading. Seated in it are seen two persons. One of them is a fair complexioned, heavily mustached man with stocky composition. The other man's bulky frame barely fits the driving seat. And see the paradox. On the other side, there is a slender looking boy whose frame barely fills his side of the seat. See the juxtaposition. And uneasy silence pervades as the mustached man growls. Move. Now, this clearly defines the relationship between these two people inside the Scorpio. That is a mustached man, heavy man, and the frail, puny looking boy. So basically, the beginning seems to be very placid, but look at the intensity, the kind of anxiety that pervades in the environment. So you have to tell them that students have to pay specific attention to the beginnings. But are beginnings the only thing in a short story? No, my dear friends, there are many more things. In fact, the beginnings and the endings both are very special in a short story. And they actually, all short stories, they are not just any scribblings on a piece of paper. They basically have a beginning. They do have a very taut middle, and they have a very evocative kind of an ending. It is in this arrangement of completion that the ending, that the short story draws its fulfillment. Look at this one. I mean, this again, another great master writer of short stories, and the masterpiece by him, The Necklace. Look at how he introduces the girl here, Miss Loisel, who actually is born in the family of poor people, some clerks, and she has ambition to look very rich and very elegant. And she ends up borrowing some necklace which she loses, and it is a meretricious one, but she is not aware of it because she has none of these, neither the real or the meretricious one. So she borrows it and she loses it and thinks that she has lost the real one, and she goes on to working and with her husband. They lead a miserable life for 10 years to make up for the supposed cost of the necklace, that is 36,000 francs they earn, and they replace it and gave it to her friend, Mrs. Forestier. But then she comes to realize this when her friend at the end, this is the last sentence of the short story, how evocative it is. She says, "Oh, well, my poor Mitail, why my necklace was a paste? It was worth 500 francs at most. Look at how our illusions are shattered. I mean, all that glitters is not gold. How beautifully this great master does, this Maupassant guy does it." And Maupassant guy is not the only guy in the world. There are many more guys like him who, of course, in their own small mortal bodies are trying to do something which the masters are telling them. Look at, this is how one of my stories also. I also use this quite a number of times. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Kumar,
I think
yes,
I think
please.
you are asking me to wind up. So look at
Yes.
this one. That is a woman going into the shop. Here is basically a customer, and the one who comes out is a mother. So she comes out because she knows that she is not happy. She is not unfortunate as the mother who was there running the shop. So she knows that her son is not 23-year-old, just 8, and he was not alive and waiting for him. So very it's a coming of age experience in the ending. Maybe, I'm sorry, I will not be able to touch upon this one, but this is how a short story gets completed, beginning and ending. But not just that. In fact, the short story writers, they punch much above their weight because they are, though minuscule in shape, they are majestic in style. Look at some of the master examples. Look at this one. This is unavoidable by all means. The Dusk by Saki. Dusk to his mind was the hour of the defeated. Look at this. I mean, is it in any way less than what great novelists are doing? Men and women who had fought and lost, who hid their fallen fortunes. Look at the imagery. Look at the strength, the intensity, the irony. I mean, this is amazing. And this is how it continues. Many more things, metaphors, paradoxes, maybe humor. Irony, look at this. Unless one is wealthy, there is no use. It is no use actually in being a charming fellow. That quintessential puckish smile on the man's face, that is Oscar Wilde, nobody else but him. He is the master humorist. Then they are, of course, cinematic technique. They are beguiling in approach, and they are brewed in analogies and comparisons. So I'm sorry I have a long way to go, but of course there is no time for me because they are very subtle, they are very complex, and in a short span of time, they do everything that is supposed to be done. So probably we can all say goodbye here by applauding our short story writers because they bring to us the pocket-sized versions of life. And thank you very much for your enormous patience. Thank you so much. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjay Kumar. Thank you for a brilliant presentation. I know you had lots to say, but you had less time. And if I could summarize your presentation, I would use your own words: minuscule in shape and majestic in style. You yourself being a short story writer and being an insider, you have been able to tell us, the learners, the teachers, and the students, how a short story works and how, if one wants to write a short story, should pay attention to. Now I would invite our last, but not the least, panelist, Professor Vinita Dhondial Bhatnagar. I have great pleasure in inviting her. She is a short story writer as well as a short story teller. So we have, different facets of people here. And she not only writes short stories, as I said, but she's a storyteller as well. She is professor in the Department of Humanities at UIT RGPV University, Bhopal. And she has been a visiting professor at York University, Toronto, and is the author of many books and monologues. She has recently taken to live storytelling and she has told stories at Singapore and at many other places in our own country. She conducts creative writing and theatre workshops. I welcome you, Professor Vinita Dhondial. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. And good evening to all my colleagues at ELTAI, all our Biradri, English language teaching Biradri. So I'm going to start with a story. And the story is called The Dot because my topic is the creative process. And the story is by Peter Reynolds. It's called The Dot. So Vashti is this little girl and she's sitting in the classroom and it's art class and she can't draw to save her life and she doesn't like drawing. So she's just sitting there and the teacher comes up to her. Everybody's submitted things and the teacher says, Vashti, have you finished your painting? She said, I can't draw. So she looks at the paper and she says, oh yes, you have. You've done a polar bear in the snow because it's all blank, of course. And Vashti said, very funny. So the teacher says, okay, I tell you what, do anything, make a mark. So Vashti takes a marker, jabs and makes a mark and says, here you are. So the teacher looks at it and doesn't say anything else. Next week, when Vashti comes back for her art class, she sees that painting with that dot put behind the teacher's desk and framed in gold. So she looks at it. She says, what is this? I can do better than this. So she goes and she now opens up her paint box, which she'd never opened up, and she starts to make another dot. And then she makes another dot. And then she makes a red dot. And she makes a blue dot. And then the colors merge and she finds she has a purple dot. And she takes a yellow dot and a green dot and different kinds of dots. Oh, different colors, different shapes of dots. Then she makes a dot by not painting a dot at all, painting the things around them and having that circle in the middle. And what do you know? At the end of that term, at the art show, she has her paintings all over and people are looking at them and seeing such depth and significance. The dot. And there's a little boy there. And the little boy says to her, I wish I could draw. And she says, well, what could you do? He says, barely I can draw a line. She says, okay, take this paper, draw a line. So he draws a line. She says, sign it. Just like her teacher had said, sign it. And that boy becomes another artist. So this is a children's story, but I think it's such a great story for creativity. Because you know what? We as teachers, I think all of us came from English literature. When we studied English literature, we came into ELT. So we're very good critics and we know this doesn't work and this metaphor and this. But what we need to do is get that side of us out. Creativity means we're not going to judge ourselves and we're going to make that first mark. This book was dedicated by the author to his 7th grade teacher and who had taught him, who told him, make a mark. So that's all we have to do. We have to make a start and just experiment, explore, discover, just as we did when we were children. And that's the fragrance of creativity. So the critical side comes later. But creativity, the creative process, the first side is just enjoying yourself and the joy of it. My own journey and then the PPT, so I don't know, I must stick to time and I want you to be very strict with me on time. But my own journey as a story writer, I have to tell you that I kept writing and I wouldn't get published and people who read would say, this is good, the plot is good, the story moves, but we don't understand this character. The character doesn't seem real. And it took me a long time, a lifetime. And last year, then I started to write and I wrote something based on my mother. And that got published. And then I began to realize when you write on people you know, I'm not saying their stories, but you know how they'll respond. So one of the things that people do say, and I now understand that is write what you know. And the other part of it is, of course, write what you can imagine because the imagination is free and we can tap into, I hope Sulva, my yoga guru is here too. And, she teaches us this and through yoga, tap into something which is more than just what we know. Tap into what the universe knows. Tap into what you know. I can tap into that. So I'll go quickly into my presentation and Vandana ma'am, you keep me really on for time, huh? Yeah. So I'm talking about the creative process. And this slide, incidentally, the slideshow has been made by Shaya, so it's a very young slideshow. We need a protagonist that we can identify with. Freud says writers have very strong egos and basically the protagonist is another version of themselves, perhaps. But we need somebody who's relatable, that can create empathy, but they do need to have flaws because, we have flaws. So anybody who's too perfect, there has to be a willpower, something that they are moving towards, and risk taking. We need conflict. The conflict can be outside, it can be in the story, it could be enemies, it could be Voldemort versus Harry Potter, but the conflict could also be inside. It could be our own doubts. We need at the action to go up, the climax to come, and then the conclusion, the story to come down to a conclusion. So falling action and a proper end. Flash fiction, both my previous speakers have both talked about short stories and mini sagas. So flash fiction, it's very short, and you need to have the beginning, middle, and end. You need to have a twist or surprise. It's very short pieces, and it's very difficult to write. So, but we can use this in the classroom. As it was said, start in media res. Don't use too many characters because it's too short to develop that. Strong imagery. You could stick to a moment. Try first person point of view, because when I say this happened to me, you can relate more. Make good use of your title because you have so few words that even the title matters. Jump into the action. Don't tell us about the emotions and feelings and thoughts and blah, blah. Leave that to the novelist. Write long, go short. So you don't have to start and say, the word limit, the word limit, the word limit. Write what you want and then delete and come down, edit. Figure out the end before the writing. Now, not always. I have a caveat for that. Make your last line ring like a bell. Some of the examples, I'll just leave you to read them, and in the sense, you could just take a look at them. Gratitude. So if you look at the last line, all right, that's the slide stopping, but not me immediately. I have some tasks for you. First, I just want to tell you about this, have the ending in mind. So my problem is I tend to have a linear mind. And when I write a story, I know where it's going. So I develop it like that. And again, the same thing happened, that when people read those stories, they said, it's all right. But when I just wrote and I didn't know where it was going, and I just wrote and it went somewhere, actually people like that more. So I realized that not always do you need to know the ending, because writing is also a process of discovering, and it's also discovering what's in you, and what you're writing from is actually your memories, subconscious, everything you've thought and learned all through your life. So all of you ELT teachers, I'm convinced you're very good teachers, and I'm going to just ask you to write, all right, just quickly in the chat, and then with that my session is over. So I just saw a film and talked about a film called Mardani, and 3-word tagline for that: she won't stop. So if you had to tell your life story in 3 words, what would those 3 words be? You could type it into a chat. Anything. She won't stop. All right. If you had, now this I'll just give you an example. If I have to write a story in 2 words, so 3 words, she won't stop. 2 words, 2 words. And if I said the words hope dealer, so I'm playing with the logic of somebody who sells drugs. So dope dealer is somebody who sells drugs, but somebody who gives hope is a hope dealer. And maybe a 1 word, unstoppable. As you can see, I'm obsessed with people who don't stop. So can you think of 3-word stories? I'll give you just a second and type them into the chat, and I'll take a look at them later while the questions are coming into Bandana ma'am. And I'm just thinking of 3 words: a love story, he chose me; a sad love story, we became I. So these games, story games, improv games, can be played in the classroom. They will encourage the students to develop fluency and to tap into their own life experiences and creativity, because we're all born creative and we stay creative. We don't lose it. It's just the critic in us. So there's a time for that critic, for the evaluation, but afterwards. After you've created, give it some gap, go back to it, then evaluate, then criticize. Don't criticize yourself in the beginning. Enjoy yourself, play. That's all I would like to say about the creative process. Thank you very much. Such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Professor Vinita. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. And I think now all those who have been present today will all start writing short stories, because we are all, we've been charged, we've been energized. As you said, that criticism is the enemy of creativity. I think all teachers and students who wish to write a short story should keep this in mind. And you have also said that the creative process undergoes certain stages, and the first stage is preparation. You have to think of the material. Second is the incubation with the insight, and finally comes the evaluation. That is, then criticism can come in. As you said, that just start writing, and then at the end you can think of deleting or making corrections. So thank you so much, Vinita ma'am. And I thank all the three panelists, Dr. Shaila Mahan, Dr. Sanjay Kumar, and Professor Vinita Dhondial, for wonderful presentations. And I would also like now that you can you post your questions, your remarks, your observations in the chat box. But and over to Xavier sir.
Ma'am, now the questions will be displayed on the chat box. You
Okay.
can post it to the speakers.
Okay.
It is now on the chat box, a gray color box
Gray colored box.
in the chat.
Chat a gray color. Chat a gray color. बोलता रहो उधर.
I request all the three speakers to turn on their camera so that you can answer the questions.
I can see some very nice 3-word stories on the chat. I've just written some down. Here and now, enjoy life, baby. So lots of lovely suggestions, and I was noting them down because they're so lovely. Keep your eye on the sky. So that was a poetic one.
There is a question. Hello.
Yes. Yes, Bandana ma'am, we can hear you.
It has. How does critical thinking skills be applied to a short story? How can we? Where is it run? Short stories. See, there is a question. Hello. What should be the
Hello, ma'am.
ideal length? Yes, there is a question. What should be the ideal length of a short story? So, any one of you, Dr. Sanjay Kumar, would you like to respond?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I would
Yes.
like to respond to this. See, the
Yes.
ideal length of a short story cannot be decided, because short story is, as I said, that's a pocket-sized version of life. So your intensity, your depiction of that, the length depends on that depiction. A story could be running into maybe several pages. It could be 15 pages, 20 pages. It could be 1 page. It could be even just 3 words, 5 words, 6 words. That great short story, as Dr. Shalaman mentioned. So it really varies. It varies and depends on how you really want to take it further.
Can
Okay,
can I intervene?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So normally speaking, I think a short story these days would be anywhere from, say, 5 words to roughly 1,000 words.
Yeah, 5 to 1,000. So pretty big bag. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, right. True.
There is a question for Dr. Shaila Mahan.
Yes.
Dr. Mahan, there's a question that how can you generate vocabulary for the learners in the classroom with the help of the short stories?
I think teaching of vocabulary along with in the communicative skills and critical thinking abilities is very, very important and significant part of any learning process. And as I said, that we can use pictures, we can use videos, and even say a teacher is the greatest resource. The teacher himself or herself can read out stories, point out the vocabulary items, the words, and tell and guide the students, and students on their own also can look up these words, and then they can make use of these words in their writings, their stories. A teacher maybe at times, teacher or a trainer can provide words, list of words, vocabulary that can be used to develop a long story. Besides these, there are many more activities that can be built around vocabulary, because vocabulary, as it is said, that is the building block for any kind of writing or speaking for that matter.
There is a question for Professor Vinita, ma'am, because I think you would be the best person to answer it. There's a question: how can one generate interest in students towards short stories? I think if they come to you, everybody would be interested. Have you got the question?
Vinita ma'am, please turn on your mic. It's
Yes.
still not on.
Yeah. And do we have enough time? Let me know how much time we have to answer this. So one of the things is to actually tell stories and to hear stories. So you tell them stories, hear stories, because stories weren't meant to be read initially. They were meant to be heard. And I'm seeing some brilliant answers here. So one is, of course, who created him? I can see anger in that. Who created him? And if you think about the story of coronavirus, then you think about this will pass. And somebody else is given here, seen the silver lining scene. So, if we play certain games and we expose them to stories, we tell them stories, and we listen to them, narrate stories. Children are natural storytellers and they have an interest in stories. So we don't have to create the interest. We just have to tap into it so that they learn English better, because that's a much better way of learning vocabulary, grammar, everything, rather than, just making them look the drills and exercises, which have their own place. So that's what I would say. Thank you.
There is a question. Hello, Dr. Sanjay Kumar.
Yes, ma'am. Here.
There is a
I'm here.
question from our ELTAI president, Dr. Sanjay Arora, that
Okay.
isn't stratagem a negative word? So are the
Of course.
storytellers playing tricks?
Yeah, they do play.
How would you respond?
Yeah, definitely they do play tricks. In fact, many of the short story writers, they are the wily customers. In fact, they bamboozle the audience and they hoodwink the audience. And it's like, if you know the cricket analogy, Dr. Sanjay Arora, it is basically a spinner sending down the googly down the pitch, bamboozling the batsman, and then regarding him, the batsman, with a wry smile on his face. So they are actually very, very deceptive, because they need to be that, because they have very little time and they have very little canvas, but they have to depict a lot of things in that. And not than that, as it has been pointed out by Dr. Bandana and Dr. Shella also, that is, short story writing has always been a neglected genre. They have never assumed the position that the big daddies of novel writing do. But then they themselves are great enough, so they come up with some such kind of stories that throw all those strategies straight away. And strategisms, of course, as far as the word goes, it is of course charged with a ploy. So it is a ploy. It is somehow deceiving the reader, in hoodwinking the reader and keeping him somehow just engaged in the discussion. So they basically, this is the basic ploy of a short story writer. And I think for this, if it is for the sake of literature and for creativity, I think this can be excused. This becomes a very pleasant kind of a deception, I should say. Hello, ma'am. Hope that answers the
Yes.
query.
Yeah, I hope so. Ask Dr. Sanjay Arora. Okay.
Yeah,
So
don't.
we'll take one final question, which I think is important, is because there are several questions, and I don't think time is running out now that we could take up all the questions. But this is different, and it says that how do short stories help indigenous languages? Any one of you could answer, please. Whoever wishes to.
In indigenous languages, how does it help, or how does it, I mean, start?
How do short stories help in building indigenous languages?
Well, one of the things is that those stories are available in English in translation. So actually, people have problems with translation. I don't, because if I can't read Bengali, at least I can read Bengali literature if it's available in translation. So there are some beautiful detective stories, ghost stories in Bengali literature, beautiful stories in Marathi literature. And in fact, what happens, I think, is it democratizes the classroom, because you have students who may be hailing from that culture and they know what you don't know. So now they are the teachers and they can tell you and they can share those stories with you. So I think there's great space for all kinds of literature, and it'll make the classroom very engaging and empower the students
Very
very
true.
much. Yeah.
Very correct.
Okay. Thank you once again. I thank all the panelists. I take this opportunity to thank the National ELTAI webinar series people for giving us this opportunity to host this webinar today. It has been a pleasure doing this. Thank you so much. And I would specially thank our National President, Dr. Sanjay Arora, our National Vice President, Dr. Shravan Kumar, Dr. Xavier, and um, our Secretary, Professor Elango, and our own Rajasthan Jaipur Joint Secretary, Dr. Jyoti Pava. And I thank Dr. Xavier for making us conversant with the new technology. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
It has been a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Thank you all. Thank you, everyone.
Over to Mohan sir now.
Thank you very much. It was a brilliant session on the art and craft of short story. And this was presented to us by Rajasthan chapter. We greatly appreciate the novelty with which the webinar was conceived and executed. We extend our thanks to all the members of the chapter. I would like to thank in particular Dr. Bandana Chakravarti for moderating the session efficiently, very efficiently indeed. The three speakers have presented their perspectives succinctly and also responded to the questions. Dr. Shaila Mahan spoke about the mini sagas and brought to life several of the stories that we are familiar with through a different medium. That was wonderful. And this was followed by Dr. Sanjay Kumar, who is himself a creative writer, who gave almost an axiomatic statement saying that short stories bring to us pocket-sized version of life. I think it's a very, very memorable quote. Thank you, Dr. Sanjay Kumar, for such a wonderful, wonderful presentation. And finally,
Thank you.
we had Dr. Vinita Dondial, who talked about the creative process, and she also took us into the details of creating a short story, what the protagonist should be like, and how our life can influence the writing of the short stories. It was in fact a wonderful session. You not only made your presentations, but you also responded to the questions most appropriately. It was a delight to have you with us. My thanks are also due to Dr. Xavier Pradeep Singh for anchoring the session, and to all the members who have attended this session, the participants for registering, attending, and also making the webinar a success. Before we conclude, I have a few announcements to make. We have provided you with a link to enroll yourselves as members of the ELTAI, please do this, and please access the feedback link, submit your feedback. This ensures you get your certificate. The certificates will be given only to those who have attended the session completely without break, and the e-certificate will reach you in about 3 days. The names that appear on the certificate will be exactly the same as the one with which you have registered yourself. Now, you can also subscribe to our YouTube link and watch this. Now, we will also request you to register for our future webinars and encourage us. Our next webinar is on Sunday, the 9th August at 4:30 p.m. It's going to be on multiple techniques to learn English as a second language. With that, we come to the end of this webinar. Take care, stay safe, have a wonderful, wonderful time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
To